Good evening and welcome to Tuesday's Monday Live. A little bit of a delay over the normal timing. James and I were at a charity event yesterday, so couldn't come back in time to do the live. But thankfully here tonight, and thank you for joining us, those that are watching. I'm following on. Normally I'd have Stuart here to ask questions for, so I'm just going to go straight into Wentworth and say what a great tournament it was. Billy Horschel, I think Mark commented, just wants to roll up Wentworth and take it home with him across the pond. Just plays that course so well, and I think it's incredible to see a course we all know so well, those of us that live nearby here, seeing how easy it looks, relatively speaking, for the world's best players. Just quite astounding that McIlroy, Manacero and Horschel were a combined 20 under par on Saturday's round. I just don't know how they do it, quite frankly. It is unbelievable. I felt for the TaylorMade Tour truck when the clubhead came off Mr. McIlroy's iron. It is only glue that bonds them together, and I'm amazed it doesn't happen more often, but with the coverage and the shock on Rory's face and the pictures of the clubhead flying down the fairway, my heart went out to the TaylorMade guys, because there's a huge source of pride in the work that they do, and that always reflects quite poorly on them. But yeah, hopefully they didn't get too much stick for it. But as I say, we've seen it with Mickelson in years past as well, with Callaway and Ironhead coming off. It is incredibly rare, but sadly it's always on the big stage when you see it. So my heart goes out to those guys. If you're wondering a little bit what's going on in the background, there's a bit of an IT issue with the computer and screens, and so James is beaving away in the background working this out, hopefully. So I will be fielding any questions that come in whilst in the meantime, and then potentially hitting some shots as well, assuming that the tech catches up with us. If not, I'll just stand and answer questions. So none so far, but so feel free to fire them in as and when you like. It's coming into the back end of the season. It's a bit of a funny time of year. From a tour point of view, obviously we've had the Solheim Cup, we've had, we're coming into the back end of the DP World Tour season, and that runs through till November, but it kind of goes a little bit quiet this time of year, I think. And you've got all the big tournaments out of the way. From an equipment point of view, we've had a couple of launches recently. Titleist done their woods recently. Callaway have had some irons come out, which are proving to be very strong. And that's something where we get a little bit of a fillip in the season where secondary launches come out. September time. Mizuno with the JPX series, they've just launched. So we get that sort of launch period now. And then it kind of bleeds off to the end of the year with the major launches coming in the new year. So we've got a few new products that we've been finding in the bays. A little bit of background on what we're seeing from a data point of view. The Mizunos, the hot metals, the Pro in particular has been very, very impressive from a performance point of view. They're an interesting look. We weren't quite so sure about the visuals on the back of their heads, but actually performance-wise and balance and ball speed, really very, very good. And the Callaway, the AI 200, 300, very strong again on ball speed. I think that was an area where Callaway, they waited a little bit of an extra bit of time to relaunch the Apex iron range, went beyond the normal 2-year cycle. And I think it's a good thing based on what's come out this year. The strength of performance off the 200 head, been very impressive. So the ball speed gains are good. We're tending to see, if you're someone with a reasonable bit of club speed, i.e. 6-iron, 7-iron speeds of mid-80s, that there's a reasonable amount of spin retention on those. And that's certainly a characteristic we've seen. If you're a little bit of a fader of the ball and get a little bit of spin onto it, once you hit certain iron speeds, the spin retention is very good. Otherwise, they can be quite punchy, quite strong. But great ball speed, and definitely, if you were umming and ahhing whether to test those out, there are some really good additions to the lineups this year. So I can see a couple of questions coming in, so I will get straight on the iPad. Thank you for joining us. We've got a few familiar faces. Very kind of you to join us. David Brett, benefits of an iron set gap wedge versus a specialist wedge. So something that we're often looking at, depending on the player style and what you're using that club for. We see both the same loft. So if the only difference is one's an outer set wedge, a specialist wedge, and one's part of the set, really it's what a bit of spin profile and what type of shots you hit. So a set wedge is better for more of a stock swing, just sort of stand and deliver. It is quite literally a short version of the pitch wedge. And whilst you are likely to play 3/4 shots, feely shots, knockdown shots, their main function is more as a kind of fuller shot swing. The heads are designed around the full swings. There is a progression of center of mass through sets now, but what you don't get that you get on the outer set wedges is the tread on the face. You've got grooves that are cut differently, faces that have milling on, and they're designed really for more of the control swings, the three-quarter swings. So generally speaking, if you're playing more of a three-quarter to full shot and want a little bit more stability off center, maybe something that's a slightly stronger flight, a little bit lower spin, then the set gap wedge is a great way to go. If you're someone who wants that little bit of extra spin control and maybe plays a few more of the feely kind of knockdown three-quarter shots, then the outer set wedge gives you a little bit more spin across the face, slightly neater head shape, and often a little bit more check on short shots, chips. For example, if you play chip shots with a little bit of spin rather than run out, you might find that benefit as well. Slightly neater head shape too. I'll go back up to, I went slightly in the wrong order. So first question, I Love Turtle, thank you for joining us. Evening Simon, have you tried the new Brava Tour driver shaft? I have. Interesting one. It's, the Bravas have been generally designed around a stiffer profile and stability versus, if you go to things like the Autoflex, they're a much softer shaft. And I think if you're someone with a very heavy load on the shaft, they're still going to feel a little bit loose. They're not that harsh under the handle end, but the lower half of the shaft is more stable. And actually I've only had a couple of hits with it, a couple of tries of it. So I'm yet to do a little bit more of in-depth testing, but I was quite impressed with the stability through the tip section. And certainly I tried the X, the sort of 60 odd gram shaft, 67, 68 gram shaft. And actually for someone in that kind of 100, 105 mile an hour region, you get quite a lot of stability without giving up feedback and feel. But obviously as you go down in the weights, they are going to get more and more responsive. But generally the stability of the tip was quite impressed with. So thanks for that question. And Freddie M, are the Accra GX Red and Shogun Red very similar shafts, in particular the 70 gram M5 versions for your case? Both very stable. I think the GX range, Accra have upped the structural rigidity this series. So I think they've really made a point of making the Red range really stable and really able to cope with quite a strong club speed and quite a strong load, and actually feel really stout. What that has done to the way they swing a little bit more tip heavy than the FX range did, but they are a little bit more stout, and that can certainly take some punishment, that's for sure. The Shogun is a bit of a smoother feel. Again, it is very, very stout. I would say that the Shogun doesn't swing quite as tip heavy as the GX does. The Shogun range really is designed around it's the highest grade material. So the GX is very good value for money for what it is. It's still not the cheapest shaft in the world, around a couple of £100 as a reshaft value. But the Shogun amps up that. So it's designed to give you the stability with a bit more of a smooth feel to it. Although at a 70 gram extra stiff, do they really feel smooth? It's incredibly stable. But the principle is more going back to like the old SE80 style, very low torque, keeping a bit of responsiveness through it, but very low torque, very stout. So the GX might feel a little harder, but the Shogun would, from a smoothness of feel and low spin, should just edge it in principle. But great quality materials. Matt M, hi Simon, when would you say is the best time to get fitted for some new irons? Irons is a slightly tough one because there aren't going to be quite the same jumps in design profiles as they would woods. I don't think there's necessarily a bad time to get fitted for irons. It depends when your main season is. So there are a lot of players who start to get fitted now to get them bedded in and ready for the start of the new season in February, March. But there are a lot of product launches at the end of January, early February. So if you want to make sure you have the absolute latest product when the majority of launches come out, then mid-Feb, once places like ours get all the product in, second half of February is a good time to do it. Then you've got them ready for kind of middle of March, back end of March, for April, May, and hopefully some springtime to kick in. But the difficulty is there are always going to be product launches every year. So you're always at the mercy of another launch every kind of 6 months, essentially. So if you're gauging around that, it's a tough one to say exactly when, but probably the earlier part of the year. Otherwise, there are a lot of good products now. I think it's safe to say with the current products that are out in the market, it's possible to find every golfer a really good set of irons. The designs and the materials that are used, the way they're being used, the forgiveness, the feel. I think we're in the best place I've seen equipment for an exceptionally long time. So there isn't really a bad time, but if you wanted the best range of options and the latest options without loads of new products coming out shortly thereafter, probably February is a good time. Robin Morton, hi Simon, nice to see you missed yesterday. That's very kind of you. How can you tell for yourself if your driver is too heavy or light? Well, too heavy is probably the easier one, in that if you feel like you've got to get your swing perfect and your timing absolutely spot on to get the best out of it, you're more likely to come off balance with a heavy club. That's easier to see. So if it feels like when you make a perfect swing, the ball flies down the fairway and goes a good distance, it's probably on the heavy side. And that if you don't put a really perfect action on, you lose your balance, lose the timing. That's too heavy. Too light, you're going to feel like when you put a strong swing on, it gets away from you, i.e. you lose a little bit of strike. And if you rein the swing back a little bit and smooth it out, then that gets you the control, but you feel like you've got more in the tank. That's probably when it's a little bit light. Ultimately, both ways you can get misses both sides of the fairway. But I think when it's spot on, you can just swing. And you can put pace and speed into it and still get consistency of contact. If you're having to fight it, it's too heavy. If you're having to gear back from it, it's too light, as a broad generalization. Gareth Jones, fitted for a Titleist TSR2 in the A3 setting to help straighten my fade and heal bad shot. Notice T marks on the face at an angle showing the face toe up / flattered impact. Any issues with this? With a driver, the lie is less important with a driver from a start line point of view because it's got the least loft on. So the less loft you have, the less important from a start line point of view lie is. What a more upright lie will do is granted you only change the lie a small amount by 1 or 2 degrees by using the hosel settings. So in principle, the more upright you make the lie, the closer you're bringing the center of mass to the hosel, the easier it is, the less effort to get the toe turning over. The more you flatten the lie off, the further you're moving the center of mass from the hosel, and the more gearing, the more effort you've got to put in to square it up, i.e. in principle it holds the face squarer or more open, but it's really minimal. So other than maybe checking that the length isn't too extreme, lie on a driver, it will mildly influence shot shape, but not majorly. So if you're hitting it well, don't worry about it. Carly Medina 3, hope I pronounced that right. Greetings from the US. Good afternoon. Or actually might still be morning if you're on the West Coast. Looking to have a more forgiving iron, 5 and 6 iron, longer iron versus my P790. Would you recommend the TaylorMade HL? The other option, I have to double check what lofts they go up to. It might not be the 6 iron. As I can say, you could go in something like the DHY, one of the driving iron style clubs. The HL, it's really about balancing the lofts. The HL, you're probably okay, actually, versus the standard QI10, in that it is a little bit more forgiving and the lofts are a little bit less extreme. So that might not be a bad option, actually. Certainly within the TaylorMade range, giving you a bit more forgiveness, but not making the loft gaps go crazy. So yeah, in principle, not a bad option to try. Visually, it'll be a very different head, but if you're getting the performance out of it, hey, it's just got to work, hasn't it? Brian McAllister, Simon, the current Tensei Orange 1K Pro feels very different from the original Orange CK Pro. Is there a current slightly CB shaft with very similar profile to the original, sinister CB ? So the feel will be the updated materials, and they're always looking to smooth out. The Tensei range is about testing new materials out. I would say, Sinister CB has performed very well, and certainly very good for spin rate, which is where the Tensei Orange tends to sit in that low spin, stable end in the counterbalance shafts. And the Sinister CB, it probably isn't quite as counterbalanced as the Tensei Orange. So if you're looking to soften the counterbalance element off a little bit, but retain the stability of the shaft, Sinister's a great option. If you're looking for more feedback and feel, then something like the Oben, the Kiyoshi HB, sorry, would be an option, but that's going to be a little bit of a softer feel. But certainly from a stoutness point of view, so I'm just looking at the shaft wall to try to jog my memory if there's anything else. Sinister TB is actually a really good shout. I think that's been a great addition to their line this year, and yeah, will be very successful. And it looks pretty cool as well. But yeah, no, very good suggestion there. Tyler Stewart, any iron shaft that's comparable to the Oben CT125? Ooh, so the Obens are very stable for spin without being harsh, but they're not a particularly tip-heavy shaft. One that's going to be similar from a flight and a balance profile point of view, and the dollar taper and the 125 feel a little bit. I'm trying to think of the best way of describing the feel. Might feel slightly heavier, possibly, but very similar from a spin and a flight point of view. You might, in theory, you may see a marginally lower flight. I mean, KBS Tour in the S Plus and the 125, that's not going to be a million miles off either. But I think the consistency of flight through the set of the Obens is somewhere where they tend to stand out. So probably one of the KBS, the dollar taper, or in the 125, or the KBS Tour in the 125, being the S Plus in both, that would be a really good start point. Freddie M, follow-up question: if I'm going for a bit of shorter build, then the tip heaviness of the GX might be a benefit for a swing weight. And is it very tip stiff and softer mid/butt, or very linear profile? And certainly, if you're going shorter, of the two Accra shafts, the GX will retain a little bit more feel of the club head. In terms of, it is very tip stout. In terms of sort of profile through, I think you get a bit less feedback under the hands, a little bit less, but yeah, probably feels slightly more stout because of the type of materials. By going to the materials they've used in the, I was going to call it the Sinister, in the Shogun, whilst it's very stable, it doesn't have that kind of hardness to it, which the GX is going to feel just a little harder because of the materials used. The Shogun will feel a bit smoother, but from a balance point of view, the GX will help just a little bit going a touch shorter, yes. Shane Delmer, hi Simon, have you tried the UST Mamiya Recoil Dart HDC graphite iron shafts? Not yet. UST are a company that we haven't stocked for a few years. I'm aware of the product launches this year, but I haven't tested them myself yet. So it may be something we look at into the new year of whether we bring any of them in or not. As a fitter, we'd love to have every single shaft on the market on the wall. We only have a certain amount of wall space, so it's something that we may well bring in. The Dart iron shafts have been very successful and been a great stock shaft for a lot of the brands. A bit of responsiveness, bit of kick, without being overly spinny, but helping launch. That's where the recoils have been brilliant over the years. And so with the HDCs, it's just something they're likely to augment a little bit of feel without losing stability. But yeah, haven't tested them quite yet, I'm afraid. Well, there was a, so James was saying there's a question by Paul, but it said the message retracted, so I can't actually see it on my screen. We'll see. Well, Paul, there was a Paul who posted a message that's been retracted. If it's something you do want to ask, please post it again. I will get back to it. Louis Gocher, evening sign. What driver shaft comes to mind to try when wanting a straight taper shaft in stiff? Something quite stout in the tip and butt section. Swing speed around 102. I mean, straight taper wise. Let's see. It's difficult because also there are so many weight options available here. So most of them, they'll taper down to the bottom few inches. Just thinking through. Stout in the tip and the butt section. Well, if you're wanting something stout in the tip and the butt section, may or may not be so straight taper on this, but actually the new Diamana Blue Board range is your classic, very stable tip, stable butt, little bit of responsiveness in the middle. That, from a profile point of view, is exactly as you describe, depending on what weight suits you. But as a shaft, I was very impressed with the stability of the tip, hitting that the other day. So that certainly matches the stout in the tip and the butt section. Other options that are going to give you that, I say it's classic blue board. I mean, Tensei Pro 1KB, the Mitsubishi have done that profile so well over the years, that it's one that a lot of companies have gone to. That blue board profile is such a versatile one. Graphite design, the DI might not be quite stout enough for you. That's, again, softer middle, stiffer button tip sections. So I would go the blue board for that, personally. Ian Linford, are there any circumstances when a blade arm would be suitable for a mid-handicap golfer? I've tried them, they seem to go lower but straighter. So the fact that there's no tungsten in the tip of the toe end, of the iron head, that is something that we're seeing with irons, where the more tech there is, the more weights move from the center of the head, and some players are sensitive to that. It can open the blade up in transition a little bit more. So it can be that if you're very sensitive to where the weight positioning in the head is, that it can help square the head up a little bit more. There are players that, even at a mid-handicap level, having a less forgiving head can dial the strike in. It's something I've seen not a huge amount of times in the Bay over the years, but have certainly witnessed where in principle, a golfer who you might not think would play say in this instance it was a 620 CB, actually struck it better, got better efficiency, and certainly consistency of contact and performance was superior to more forgiving models. Take a T150, for example, that the odd hot one came out, but actually the consistency was better. So it can happen, but the player has to be accepting that a miss might punish them a little bit more. I find with my own game that if I go too forgiving, I actually lose efficiency because I can't actually feel where the strike is. So it may be that if you're tuned into that, it can help you find the middle of the club face, because you can gauge your strike position and then dial that back in. So you don't have to be a scratch plus digit handicapper to do that. But the payoff is that a thin in the winter hurts a lot, and you might well drop a little bit more distance back on a miss strike, but the good hits may actually be more consistent. So it is something I have seen before. S-Co, might be Lord Co, you never know. Might be Lord Co. Are there any irons that compare to a Miura TC201 or a CB302? I was lucky enough to try some, but they are pricey. You are correct, they are pricey. Is there a cheaper alternative that could get near to that buttery Miura feel? Well, actually, from a feel point of view, they are, pricing-wise, a lot better currently. Epon. Epon are a brilliant Japanese head as well. With the cost of the yen, some of the pricing is actually quite good at the moment. The yen's relatively weak, but Epon, the CB, I will actually, James, could you grab the CB Epon head for me? That would be one where I would say the Epon might feel a little bit softer than the Miura. I think the Miura's, I wouldn't describe them as the softest feeling head out there, but they're some of the most stable, solid feeling heads out there, i.e., to me, the head stays with the contact. It's almost like it deflects a little bit less. The Epon CB that is being displayed in front of camera by James beautifully there. Still a beautiful quality head. Endo, biggest forging house in Japan. Epon being their top line product. They also make Proto Concept. That is a head that will give you a really good quality product, which is noticeably less dear. So that would be more like a TC201. You don't quite get the split of the perimeter weighting, but it's a similar kind of CB style head. And 302, I would say, what would I say for 302? You say 302, there's no face tech on Miura, and this is the one thing that makes it a little bit difficult, because there's being no face tech. There's a company called GMAR, which is a Swiss brand that you've probably never heard of, that Gianni Martinelli, who's an absolute specialist in the science of forging, the metallurgy, the science of the metal, forges components for huge companies like Porsche and Boeing. But he's engineered a vacuum behind the face, so rather than having to fill it with a foam or add different materials in, there's a vacuum behind the face that gives a bit of speed. Now that does make it quite a different feel to the Miura 302, but you'll likely get a little bit more ball speed and a little bit more pop off the face. It won't feel quite as soft, but getting a head that's going to perform like the 302 without someone adding a bit of tech, without there being tungsten in the head, that's quite hard. A lot of the other brands have added materials in to try and get a bit more forgiveness. So the 302 is actually, ironically, the harder one to match to. Papa B, hello young man, hello. Nice to have you on again. Can you please tell me the pros and cons a senior scratch player might see between one-piece forged irons and multi-material ones? So the pros of the less tech you put in the head, the less there is to create, higher tolerances, bigger differentials in ball speed and spin and flight. So the reason why the very top ball strikers in the world play a blade is because there is nothing to get in between a good hit and a flyer, essentially. The more tech you put in the head, the more, for example, face tech, thinner, the more deflection you get, the more variation that you're likely to get in ball speed and spin. Now, it is getting better, but the more you go to a blade, the more you get absolute control. The downside of that is you get no forgiveness. So there's no help in getting ball speed and ball speed progression through the set. So with a T150, a Mizuno MP243, or go bigger, more forgiving, there's more thinner faces, faster faces. You go to something like the ZX5 Strixon, you're getting help as you go up the set towards the longer irons. You're getting help getting progressive ball speed gain. So it's easier to keep distance gaps through the set. You're gaining forgiveness, you're gaining margin of error. So it's a bit of a sliding scale as to what's more important. If you're willing to give up forgiveness, but you just want to know that you can't hit your 8-iron more than 145 yards, then a blade will give you that, but it won't give you anything on a miss strike. If you're more concerned about missing long, go less tech. If you're more concerned about a miss strike dropping back too much, go more tech. That's essentially the pro and con for the technology versus a one-piece head point of view. Tyler Stewart, thanks for the answer. Which KBS iron shaft is heavier in the tip section? Of those two, the KBS Tour will feel slightly more in the tip. The dollar taper is a hair higher balance. KBS do the C taper range, which is a much heavier tip, but that will swing totally differently to the CT125. So in terms of keeping it swinging and allowing you to move the same as the Oba, and that's why I went the dollar taper or the KBS Tour, because they're similar balance points. John Puckett, differences between the Tour V and the Modus 120X. Is there anything KBS makes that's similar to the Modus 130? Thank you and love the channel. That's very kind of you. So there's a lot of difference between the Tour V and the 120X. The Tour V is essentially designed to be the same flight as the original KBS Tour, but 10 grams lighter. So what they've had to do is stiffen up the tip in order to keep the spin in check at the lighter weight. So it actually feels a little bit stiffer than the standard KBS Tour relative to weight, because the tip section's a bit stiffer. But the balance point is sort of upper mid. It's certainly, you don't get a counterbalance steel, but it's not a million miles off. The Modus 120 is designed to be soft in the grip end, soft in the butt section, so that you get some feel and loading into the shaft, but very stiff in the tip section for dispersion consistency. So balance-wise, because of that stout tip, softer butt section, proportionally there's a little bit more material on the tip end, and the balance point's much more down the bottom end. So the Modus 120X is sort of 118 gram, Tour V 120 is 120, but the weight positioning is very, very different. In terms of KBS making something similar to the Modus 130, the Modus 130 is a different structure to the 120. So the 105 and 120 Modus are that same profile of soft butt, stiff tip. The Modus 115 and 130 are softer tip, stiffer mid and butt section. So they're designed to be stout through the middle and give a little bit of kick through the tip. That draws the balance point back up the shaft somewhat. So the Modus 130 is probably closest, is actually ironically is 125 grams. It's probably closest, because of the tip section, go back to that old friend, the KBS Tour S Plus 125, or say a soft stepped KBS Tour 130. It's that kind of profile where they're using the tip section in both shafts, but the Modus might still feel just that little bit tighter overall. Freddie M, one of Rory's weak spots is approaches, 50 to 100 yards, absolutely. He plays lighter 125 gram wedge shafts than most pros. Do I think he should try heavier wedges to gain some control? Well, it's an interesting one, because I think control-wise, and this is not to disparage, Rory is an incredible golfer, but proportionally his wedge game is weak. There are a couple of elements to this. I mean, lighter in wedges is something you wouldn't ordinarily go, but in order to get he plays a Project X 7.0. It's absolutely brute of a shaft. Players often want to go to something a little bit softer in the wedges, and actually for Rory to keep the feel of the shaft and the balance point the same, but drop a bit of flex, he's got to go to a softer flex and therefore a lighter weight. Could be part of it, potentially, could be. The other aspect of Rory's swing is, I'll do this on camera, one of the reasons he's so good with a driver is because he has that move where, he goes right, so drops underneath, and he rips through that way. So he creates that real sweeping action. I might move back a bit just to make sure it's visible. So he has that drop underneath, whip through, massive amount of speed, massive amount of lag, but he has that bit of rotation through the ball as well. Now, being that sweep, upward angle attack, a little bit from the inside, face squaring, it's beautifully efficient for the driver and for distance. We all know Rory is unbelievably good at that side of things. But the moment you put low right side face rotation onto a wedge, not good. And this to me is where you see, when it goes wrong, he tends to get a little bit underneath, and his finish tends to be more up and over his shoulder. So there was a period where you'd see every shot that didn't go too well with his wedges, you'd almost see him go there and kind of drop down to his shoulder. It was too over the top. When he's playing his wedge shots best, he tends to play more of a sawed-off finish. Actually, what that achieves is a little bit more of a turn out the way, as you see the face stays nice and square. If I work underneath and roll, face is looking that way. If I rotate through and almost hold the face off a little bit, it's pointing that way. So it's pointing that way, the face is more stable, there's more spin, but it's a more predictable flight and distance. If it goes that way, it's turning spin off and flight off, and you get the odd shooters and the ones that loop left. Strangely enough, left is where most of his bad misses go with the wedges. So it could well be partly to do with the balance and the weighting of his wedges versus his irons. Part of his superpower and the driver is part of his weakness with the wedges, in my opinion. He's as we saw at the Ryder Cup in Italy, he's capable of playing some unbelievably good wedge shots because he's an unbelievably good golfer. But normally, when you have a particularly big strength in part of your game, it normally is compromised or compensated for by another part not being the best. So someone like Spieth, brilliant wedge player because he works underneath, holds the face off, not a great driver of the ball, as witnessed even when he won at Birkdale, out of town right. So they all have their kind of yin and yang in terms of strengths and weaknesses, and this one, in my opinion, is Rory's. Ian Linfoot, level of knowledge is incredible. That's very kind of you. Yeah, thank you very much. Brian McAllister, Simon, Titleist have the Tensei Blue 1K as a stock option. How different is the standard Blue 1K Pro? Presumably just lighter, slightly better materials. Yes, the Pro series, so they've got the 1K Blue and Black as they have done the Black with their stock options. The Pro, you're absolutely spot on. It's a higher tier material, so it's thinner layers, less resin, more graphite, which means they can be more specific with where they put materials, where they put strengths. They can affect the bend profile more easily, but it also means you can keep more feel. So a lot of the time with low-grade materials, you've got to, when there's lots of resin in there, you've got to load them up and kill the feel in order to kill spin. The better grade material you go to, because there's more graphite to resin content, you can actually layer the directions of the weave to affect the performance, the torque, the stiffness, and you can choose how you structure the shaft a little bit more. So it allows them to get lower spin relative to feel, but develop the profile of the shaft a little bit more as well. So that's where the Pro One has, it's not to say that the 1K is a bad shaft, it's just with more what they would term entry-level materials. I Love Turtle, has Stu been locked in the basement? I think Barney's not letting him out tonight. I think he's got bored of being sat down here whilst we do the lives, going to sleep. I think he's just he's put the lead on Stuart and taken him home. Mike T, have you tested the new graphite design anti-gravity shafts, lightweight? How do they perform? That is actually on my list of things to do later this week. We've been the guys in the workshop have been doing a load of new demos from the GC graphite designs, the anti-gravities, the Bravas. There's a load more that we've got coming through that we're going to be doing a lot of testing over the next month or so, doing a few videos. But that is one on my list to test very, very shortly. So if you ask me next week, I will have tested it and I will let you know. Nick and I will. So Beach, I'm gonna say that. KS, yeah, Nick K. There we go. Does getting ping irons retro/power spec impact the loft offset bounce? The answer is yes, all of the above. So Ping have a ordering system where the standard retro is weaker loft, so kind of older style lofts, and power is de-lofted stronger. So I'm going to grab one of the iron heads that James placed on the side here, just so I can show the difference. So what happens when you add loft, when you retrospec, is obviously the shaft stays in the same place, and you add loft, you turn the head that way. To pick up my fingers. So I'll go stand further where I can do it from here. So you add loft. So as you can see here, that back edge sits down more. And so you're adding bounce. So for every degree of loft you add, you're adding a degree of bounce. What you're also doing is, if anything, you're pushing that leading edge forwards very slightly. So you're bringing that leading edge more in line with the shaft. So as you add loft, you're reducing offset. There's another part of the lie. Lie isn't affected, or doesn't have to be affected, because with the shaft you can move it directly back and forth on that line. On a wood, when you change a hosel position, it does impact the lie a little bit as well, and the face angle. With an iron, it doesn't have to, because you're bending straight back and straight through in the same way you can affect lie without affecting loft. So if you power loft, the opposite happens. You're turning the loft down, you're bringing the leading edge a little closer. So for every degree you de-loft, you take the same amount of degrees of bounce off. But what you're also doing is you're bending the hosel. Sorry to flip this around. You're bending the hosel that way. So what you're doing is you're moving the leading edge back away from the hosel or from the line of the shaft and adding offset. So you affect not the lie, but you affect the loft, the bounce, and the offset, but not the lie. That was about clear as mud, that one, I think, wasn't it? Freddie M, did you check Rahm's stats from 50 to 100 since he's got the same wedge shafts as Rory and he's excellent at those distances, so maybe it's not the shafts. It would only be the shafts relevant to what the player needs. So the shafts on their own, you know, technically they're going to be spot on for some players and not right for other players. You know, Rahm is also more of a fader of the ball. He has less toe over release in his swing. So if he hits a drive, he's playing a fade most of the time. It's a very, very powerful one, but he hits a left to right. Rory's more of a right to left player. Although, I mean, a couple of the shot tracers, particularly at County Down, were just arrow straight. So you know, when he's really on, he has less of that rotation. Then his wedge game's a bit better, but it can turn over a little bit more. But that also, that fade bar, therefore that club face staying on line, that is also one of the reasons why Rahm's wedge game is a little bit stronger than Rory's, just through natural technique in that respect. I love Turtle. Shout out to Kate, RA Charlie Hull RNA video, very good. If you haven't seen it, James's wife Kate, who's our personal trainer and trains Charlie Hull, Georgia Hall, the RNA did a series of videos with Charlie and Kate about Charlie's training and what they've been working on, and you know, how they're developing Charlie's fitness and what it does for her. If you're into that side of things, or even if you're not, even if you want to see what the top players go into to develop themselves, I wouldn't say just their games, but actually themselves, how they help, you know, their physical state, but also the mental state, and that in Charlie's game, as we all saw against a certain Miss Corder in the Solheim Cup, when she gets that right, she's unbeatable. And you know, the physical fitness doesn't just help the body, helps mind as well. So if you fancy having a watch of that, then you know, search out the RNA videos, and you can watch Charlie and Kate in the gym just next door to me now. But thank you for that, Mr. Turtle. It's, glad you watched them. Peter Cantor, hi Simon, I see back from injury Freddie Couples is rocking 6 hybrid up. Lydia Coe is rocking it with lots of hybrids. Do we all need to rethink our hybrids approach and leave ego in the clubhouse? I certainly think as golfers, yeah, leaving ego in the clubhouse is always a good baseline because actually it's just what works. I think someone like Lydia Coe, with her game, she's not a power player. So, I mean, she's by no means short, but she's not a power player. And what the hybrids can give her, Charlie is. Charlie's actually, you might know how tall Charlie is. She's 5'9". That was one of the things that actually surprised me about both Charlie and George, is they're both taller than I thought they'd be. So Charlie is a power player. She's a really strong iron player. Gets more height, more spin, so can attack the mid to longer irons more. Lydia is less so. So what that means is she's going to get less height and less stopping power out of the longer irons. So going to a hybrid suits her game in particular. Freddie going to a 6 hybrid was quite a surprise. For him to go to that number of hybrid, I mean, I thought he hit up his nostril. But again, he's playing in the US. I know they were at Pebble Beach last week, so less appropriate maybe for hybrids. But that would be really based on him wanting to, again, get the height and get the stopping power. And maybe just feels coming back from injury, feels that that's just easier to do. So wants to play that. But ultimately, it's about getting the right club for you, for where you play, and for the shot types that you're looking for from that part of the bag. And say ego in the clubhouse is the best place for it. That's for sure. Quite hard to do though, really. And I struggle with that still. I have added a 5-wood to the bag though. 5-wood was surprisingly useful actually over a 2-iron, particularly when it's wet and cold here now. So yeah, definitely just play what works. John Bishop, hi Simon, could you hit a couple of shots in Stuart's absence using the letter O in the precision golf as your target? Well, there are 2, so you need to let me know which one you want me to aim at. And I will do my best. I don't know how visible it'll be. I'll do my best to pick the appropriate club to sting one into the O, but let me know if it's the O of precision or the O of golf, and I will give it a go. Josh Wright, are you looking to change your fairway wood soon? Perhaps one of the new GT2 or 3 or another one? Are you still in the Paradigm Original? I am still in the Paradigm Original. Actually, I'm not looking to change it at all. It's been great. I only switched it about a year or so ago, and coming from the Epic Flash Sub-Zero that I had before, I've gained the consistency in spin and flight. But it's working really well for me at the moment, so it's not something I'm looking to change. Although I was pleasantly surprised by the 5-wood, so that might certainly, I think, over the winter, as long as it's not a really windy day, I think the 5-wood's probably in the bag over the winter. Actually, I was quite pleasantly surprised by how it wasn't as high a flight as I thought it might be. I was able to control the pitch of flight a bit more, so yeah, that'll stay in the bag. Aidan, have you ever played the BMW Championship course at Wentworth off the back sticks? If so, what have you shot? I have done. The caveat to this is you can't go off the back one on the 6th, and if you go off the back one on the 17th, you're a lunatic. I played in a competition called the Paragon Cup a few years back, and I had we started on the 11th. It was a shotgun start. I had an amazing start. Was I think a couple under playing the 18th, and then it all went. I think I shot a 75, and I played it a couple of months back on a very wet day. Tom Bushell, one of our fitters, and I got invited by a member there. Very very kind invite, but it was peeing it down with rain. We played off the back members tees, and I shot 74 in very wet conditions. And I hit my 5-wood on a couple of the par 4s for a second shot. I don't know how Rory hit a 9-iron into the 12th. I don't think I've ever got anything less than a 4-iron or a 2-iron there, even in summer. But yes, no, I've had the pleasure of playing it a couple of times, and it is really hard. So those guys are stupidly good. Don't know how they do it. Freddie M, excellent stuff. Thank you very much. Brian McAllister, been playing the steel fibre 110 constant weight shafts in R-Flex for a few years now. How will they compare generally to the Axiom 105S? Thanks for the content, great as usual. Thanks for the questions. The questions make the content, and the interaction is what makes this worth doing for us. We love the interaction. I don't want to stand here talking on my Todd about things that I think you guys want to hear. The questions and the interaction is what makes this a great fun for hopefully all of us, but for me also. So thank you for all the interaction. The Axiom in the 105 are more tip weighted. So whilst they're a little bit lighter, you'll may well find the swing weight goes up a little bit, and they might feel The axiom in the S might feel a little harder. The tip section is going to be a bit more stable. The steel fibers, due to the graphite core, are still quite a strong shaft. So even in the R, they're going to play up in flex a little bit. But the axioms, yeah, you'll definitely get a little bit more natural feel for the bottom end of the shaft. Might see a slightly lower spin, slightly, but more swing rate's going to go up, probably by a good point or so, point and a half. So the balance of the club will change quite noticeably between those two. Horse racing legends, have you tried the Ram axial blade? I haven't, I'm afraid. I have tried the Ram zebra putters. They're actually quite good. My best friend from school had one of the originals. I think he's still got it. He's an annoyingly good putter with it. Every putt of his sort of falls apologetically over the front middle of the hole. You think it's coming up 6 inches short and it carries on. But I haven't tried the blades yet, I'm afraid. But yeah, putters are interesting. It's quite interesting seeing some of those brands coming back around, obviously being bought out and then trying to relaunch. So yeah, I remember Tom Watson, Nick Price using Ram over the years. So yeah, interesting to see whether that's something they continue to develop and hopefully get a bit more presence. Aidan, if you have time, could you hit the TSR2 5-wood versus ping? The issue we have is that I can't get the data, so we'll have to do that. I'll do that one. I'll see where I get to. We might reset that up and do that. Bear with me. I will do the hitting at the O. I'll answer horse racing legend and Tom Smitz's question, and then I will go back to that 5-wood test for you. Horse racing legends was looking for heads for my Oban CT115 stiff shafts. I'm assuming from the Ram blades. I mean, a blade's going to be a blade's a blade in the grand scheme of things. There's going to be knacker all forgiveness. I think the interesting thing is going to be what sort of quality materials, what are the tolerances like, and that sort of softness of feel that we all want out of a blade. It depends what they've done. Tolerances can be a little interesting where they've been to as a brand and coming back from. So hopefully the quality is pretty good. Great shafts, CT115s, all great players use that. Yeah, I think it's interesting to see what kind of quality materials they've gone to. Tom Smitzer, spine finding or flow, shot shapes for driver. So the spine side of it, I'll grab a shaft just to display this, doesn't really influence shot shape other than consistency of a huge amount. So from a spining, puring is what we do here, point of view, you're trying to get the most stable part of the shaft, target side, facing the target, because from a consistency point of view, let me get a club, as the shaft loads and twists, from the start down, as you move down, it loads that way. So toe up, assuming you're on plane. And then as you come through, it bows under and then recovers. So that load and recover, if the most stable part of the shaft is offline, it's going to cause the head to orient itself back towards that. It's a bit like, we joke here, a kind of shopping trolley wheel. You get one that wants to take you in a direction you don't want to go. You can try and push it straight for all you like and it veers off. It's a similar sort of principle to that, or balancing a car wheel. For best results on spin consistency and flight and ball speed consistency, you want the stiffest part, the spine, target side. There are instances where you can put it facing away from target. Then the principle is that it kicks through a little bit more and adds a little bit of launch and spin. We would always try to orient it down the target line. That way you're giving yourself the most consistency possible. In terms of, let me just reread that bit of a question. Shot shapes for driver. Ultimately, you're wanting it to be as consistent as possible. So we would recommend putting it target side in the traditional position. To give a bit of a picture on what it can do, this is a sort of sample puring report. So what this shows you is this is a graph of the consistency of, you can argue, kind of consistency of roundness of the shaft. So what the puring machine does, you load the tip underneath a load cell, so it measures the upward force, and then you roll it. And then as that upward force varies, it creates this graph here. So you can see that's the stiffest point of the shaft there. So what you then do is putting a mass on the end, it oscillates the shaft, you do a logo up sort of control test, and that produces a graph, a pattern of how the shaft oscillates. Then what you do is you start off testing on around the stiffest point, and then it gradually finds the most stable position. So on this shaft, you can see original low go up, and that is the sort of after position, before and after, so the cured position. And then the shaft is marked, and then you install it. And then when you install it, that puts the stable point target side. So in this instance, there's a huge improvement in, there's normally a percentage number they put on here. There's a 94%, there we go, a 94% change in the consistency of that shaft. That's really where the bouncing the car wheel analogy comes in, because you want the shaft to orient the head onto the swing line that you've put onto it, rather than twisting it and creating inconsistencies in spin, inconsistencies in flight. So I would always go target side, because then what you do is reflected in the shot type, rather than anything extraneous going on, any extra twisting. So so it was the O in golf, please, for 2 shots. Right. So I reckon that looks like about a 5-iron trajectory. I haven't actually, believe it or not, I haven't actually tested this before. So this is a completely new, completely fresh test. I'm going to do it on, I'm not going to cheat and steer it, I'm going to do it on full power. So, right. I don't know how much James can dial in on this, but I'm going to claim I hit it anyway, even if I miss. So, right. Oh, I pulled it into the G. Right. The trajectory's bang on. For those that, if you can't see it, perfect flight, but a pull. Right. There we go. Right in the heart of the O. Thank you very much. Right. Sealing this out of the way. Let's find that screen. I'm just going to load up TrackMan to give us the data screen, and I'm going to get those. This will probably be one of the last bits I'll do. I'll try, once I've done this, I'll try and get back to those next couple of questions. Looking at TSR. So TSR2, I can't do because we haven't got that ahead anymore, but I'll do the GT2 and the 430. Right, okay. Look at that. James has already done it. Could you grab me the Kyoshi purple? Or unless you've already done it. 75. A little bit more down this way, unless it's next door. That's a hybrid. It might be on the wall next door. So you've got James running. He's doing his high rocks training. Okay. So I've got my 5 wood, as I will do these in the standard loft setting. So thank you very much. Thank you. Right. Okay. So what I shall do, let me hit a couple with my gamer 5 wood just to give a marker point onto this. So I'll be playing this for around the 220, 225 mark. A little low on the face. Little pulled. 226. Yeah, decent spin, 4,000. Let's do one more. Little low launch, little high spin because of the strike. Might come out a bit hot. I'll turn that over a little. Okay, so that one, that's probably more representative. 14 launch, 3,750 spin, 230 carry, hit that very well. So, slight drop in connection for James to dial, and he's going to try and dial back in. So I'm going to go to the ping next. So with my own 14 launch, just under 4,000 spin. Ping sits down a little bit more, so I'd anticipate a slightly higher launch. So that one, 14 and a half launch Ooh, that one spun up a little bit. Well, that could be a... I'd expect... So the Paradigm Triple Diamond is quite a low spin head. The 430 Max is more of a mid-spin head. So this is why I've not played 5 woods in the past, because they've flared up massively. So launch was good, but the spin's 1,000 revs more. I'll do one more to give it a fair crack of the whip. Slightly heely. So, yeah, so this is why for me the ping, particularly the 5 wood, doesn't work. It just spins too much. That was a bit heely and it's gone to 5 and a bit 1,000 revs. So if I swap that over to the Titleist. So if you're someone looking for a little bit of launch and keeping spin on the upper side, mid to upper side, the ping is a fabulous, fabulous fairway wood. But that spin rate is why it's not in my bag. Let's get the screw off there. Ah, that might be one of the issues. The tip's just... we have just had a tip failure. So that might explain the very high spin on the other. I will get a very similar shaft. Give me a VR7 graphite design, because that, if I do that, the head's going to end up in the net. A little more this way. Just keep coming, keep coming. A bit further down, it'll be in that batch there. Cool. So, right. So I'll go GT2 on this one. VF on this, but hey. So, again, a little more compact head. Nice looking head, the GT2. So this one of the things that Titleist wanted to do with this was get launch angle up. That's got a half spin read. It's always the good hits. 15 launch, but 2,000 spin I do not think is the case. So let me do one more of those. So bit toe side. So a bit toey, I'll do one more with that. So 16 launch, 4,000 spin. So what we're seeing with this one is, with both of these heads versus my Paradigm, launch angle's a little higher, flight's a little higher. Yeah, so that one really picked the flight up a little bit more. 16 launch, get 4.8 on spin. So for me, these heads, I need the lower spin head if I'm playing a 5 wood. Whereas those two are designed to get a little bit more flight on them. They're great at getting elevation and getting spin. So if you're someone who hits a flatter ball flight, the GT2 and the ping, great heads. So we've got 2 minutes. I'm going to pile through as many of these as I can. Aidan, good shooting round, Wentworth. Thank you very much. What was the format of the cup yesterday? Did you play? Yes. Broadcasters Cup was Team Rollers, which was Sky, versus Team Bentleys, which is BBC, and it was effectively match play, one team from one against the other, and the Team Rollers won with Dame Laura Davis captaining, and there were some individual team prizes as well, but really fun format. James and I played with James Guy, the Olympic swimmer, six Olympic medals, really, really good fun, great bloke, and very broad shoulders. Paul, I've tried the Titleist GT3 as a senior with a swing speed below 90 miles an hour. Found the graphite design VF performed well, felt great. Would it be worth it for me or go for the second best 10-55? Ultimately, that is a question for how much you feel there is extra value in the VF. There will be a significant upcharge to it. So it depends how much extra value you feel you got from that shaft. Without seeing how much extra distance you got or extra performance, I can't really comment, but it will be a reasonable upcharge. So I think you've got to feel like you're getting enough value out of that to make it worthwhile. Ian Linfoot, would it be possible to grind a pre-worn leading edge into a P790 iron? I would not want to grind a P790 because it's hollow. A single piece forging, you can do it. The problem is you might affect the chrome. You certainly affect a warranty, but a hollow head, don't put a grinding wheel anywhere near it. Would be my comment. Craig T is fitted by Titleist for T300s 3 years ago with light graphite shafts. My handicap has come down from 13 to 8. Should I move to better player irons? Well, Monty got to world number 2 playing game improvement irons, so you don't have to. I think test, make sure there is or isn't some performance gain in order to inform your decision, but don't feel like you have to change. If you're playing well and enjoying using them, you know, there's a reason your handicaps drop that much. So make sure you're seeing a gain rather than just doing it because you're meant to be playing them at that handicap. You know, they say Fred Couples plays a 6 hybrid. He's one of the best players that's been on tour for God knows how many years. So don't feel like you've got to if they're working. Right, last couple. Do you find sometimes just fitting 2 specialist wedges is optimal, e.g. 52 and 58? Depends on the player. If you're a long hitter, you need generally more coverage down the bottom end, more armory. However, the more wedges you have, the more decisions you've got to take. If you've only got 2, it's blindingly obvious which one is the right one, but the wedges have to be more versatile in terms of grinds and things. So both pros and cons. Depends on the player, really. John Bishop, thanks for the demo. Never a doubt. There might have been for you, there was for me. Right, I will do, this will be my last one, and then I will check out. JB Weezer, do you think there's not enough emphasis in the golf industry on sole grind or for irons? Thank you, James. Srixon has a V-sole, but most others are basically flat. Thoughts? I think it's an interesting point. There's a lot of focus on wedges and not necessarily irons. I think that's one area Srixon have done well. If you look at almost hybrids, fairway wedges is almost more talk of progressed sole profile. I think if there was a really noticeable gain, then more companies would have done it rather than just Srixon, because I think a pre-worn leading edge is what we've seen come in a lot over the last 4 to 5 years. And there's much more talk about trailing edge relief and looking at wedge grinds, taking your Titleist launch, looking at the wedges as inspiration for iron sole grinds. So they are probably doing it more than you might think, but I would be surprised if we saw many more go down the extent of what Srixon have. However, softer turf conditions or steeper swings, there is definitely a good gain from it. Thank you so much for all the questions and for joining us, joining me tonight. I really appreciate all the kind comments and the questions. It's great, all the interaction. Thanks for joining us on a Tuesday rather than a Monday. Stuart, I hope will be back next week. The gruesome twosome, hopefully, and means save my throat and voice. But thanks for watching. Any questions on coaching and equipment, we will answer to our best extent next week. Hope you have a fantastic week, and we look forward to seeing you next Monday, 30th of September, for another Monday Live. Thanks for joining us.